Ano 2016, nós fomos andar onde nós caçamos tranquilo. Ano passado, 2017, nós vimos uma picada já marcando o lote.
This was a moving documentary short set in Brazil concerning the Asurini people. I was impressed by this group of people who've worked hard to maintain their cultural and spiritual traditions and leadership. They also reject some of the technology that the government has offered them as they want to maintain their way of life. The government has granted them land protection, but sadly other groups have ignored this and have been on their land doing illegal things such as logging. It was upsetting to hear that they have asked the government for help to enforce their land protection, but have not heard back from the government. Lots of effective shots of the trees and rivers in the area, often via drones. Very eye-opening documentary. Well
Anyway,
done.
it was a fascinating story. It's about 30 minutes long documentary about the Asurini tribe, very primitive tribe in Brazil, in the rainforests of Brazil that is basically being invaded by civilization, the loggers, and all those horrible people. And it was interesting to see, their world and then hear their stories. So that was a fascinating look into something you don't really see too often. But I wish because there was a company that clearly is sort of the bad guy, and they are, and then other people are just taking advantage of them, and it's really kind of sad. But I wish they would have talked to some of the people in the company to get that point of view and see what's going on. They do show some quotes and stuff from the company, and it looks like they're just the president of Brazil and the corporations just want the forests, and these guys are fighting to keep it. So it was fascinating. Well done.
I felt like this was just deeply ethical filmmaking, with the locals reaching out with their proposition for the story, some of their own filming to supplement it. It's like journalism, but from the inside, and getting justice by bringing these stories to light, or hopefully finding justice. The stories of colonialism and history are rampant, and unfortunately it seems no matter what case study you look at, it's the same thing that repeats itself, of people encroaching on land that's not theirs and claiming it so that they can turn a profit on it. And that the proliferation of disease and disintegration of social structures and attempts to remove culture is disheartening. And getting to see it from this and from the filming and the perspective of locals, I think, is really important. But we also got to see how brilliant and resilient these cultures are, the community ties, how they look after themselves and live as stewards of the land. And I really appreciate this piece, and I'm hopefully going to learn more in the future about this group as well.
Such a important documentary. I think there are so many communities that are just trying to survive and live their lives and just do what they do and to keep their own culture and tradition alive. And it's heartbreaking to kind of see communities like this be struggling so much with people who are overstepping, taking from their land, taking their resources. And then it's another thing where the government is aware of what is happening, but is choosing to do it their own ways by throwing technology and money at it, rather than finding resources to really help this community grow and thrive on their own. So it's one of those documentaries where it is interesting to kind of see how everything has been working, because for people like myself, I just don't know to look at these things, and this was a very educational way of just telling the masses of what is happening, and hopefully more people get to see this, become educated about it, and find ways to help them or do something about it rather than just ignoring their lives. But yeah, I think this documentary was done in such a respectful way, where you do get to hear from the source and from the people who are living there, and just hearing their stories rather than this other form of documentary where it's just searching and research that's done and through a secondary source. So overall, really great job.
This is a magnificent, very informational, well-researched, and just extraordinarily brave film. It is appalling to see the abuse and mishandling of natural resources in one of the main reserves in the planet, with beautiful scenes of the community's daily life. They talk about the bravery and inspiration as the people fight for their right to their land, and in all honesty, for the survival of the rainforest. It is quite enraging to see the oppression by the Brazilian government under the Bolsonaro regime, and government officials being just behaving just against the law and creating indignation for their blatant disregard to the community culture, their tradition, and their primary role as indigenous communities of preservers of the land and the rainforest. It was just a very brave effort to bring this to the forefront, and I am glad they are taking the steps necessary to get a an ironclad defense legally, so they can keep their right to their lands, their land and the resources and how they are used to living. It was just awful to read the last quote about bringing them into civilization and just bringing them to humanity. It's just awful. And yeah, I am so glad I watched this film. I am glad for their efforts, and I hope they
That
succeed.
was a powerful short film, very well produced. I thought it was a very powerful communication of these people's plight. Gave us a good introduction into the way they live, their way of life, why their land is so important to them, and the fact that they brought us right into the village and told most of the story through these witness testimonials from the people who are living this situation. It's a really powerful way to get the message across and to have us sympathize and understand, empathize with this group of people and their struggle and their what they're up against. So I really hope this film helps to get them more support and get their message out and to defend their people. Because it's very well made. I thought that the filming was very high quality, good editing. I liked the music, the soundtrack. Everything just kept it moving along. The way that the subject matter was explored, like the sequencing of the film was well done, so that we understood the whole way what was being talked about. We were just really brought into the story subject matter in a very well guided manner, and I thought it was very strong and conveyed its message quite well. Hopefully it gets a wide release.
It is both wonderful to get the privilege of going into and getting to see a culture and community, all its own, so different from our own and yet common and similar in so many important ways. But it is also devastating to see what is being done to this community and to their land. And hopefully through forms of media like this documentary that can bring light to it on a wider scale, that can in some way slow this devastating process of this land continuously getting stolen and the resources becoming depleted. It is truly heartbreaking, and I think that getting to hear right from them directly, rather than some secondary source in between, makes us all the more aware of how serious the problem is.